This podcast is a frank discussion on sexual assault. If you are in the USA for free and confidential help, please call 1-800-865-HOPE. If you are in Australia for confidential counseling and support in cases of sexual assault or abuse, please call 1-800-RESPECT.
Hello and welcome to Open Stance. I am Tracy Height-Smith, and in this episode, I have the privilege of hosting for the second time American Jon Vaughn, former Michigan University and NFL football player. Jon is an outspoken global leader advocating for survivors of sexual assault. In this episode, Jon speaks to us open-heartedly about how a company called Headspace Health has been such a critical resource and service guiding his recovery and healing from sexual abuse. Thanks for listening, and please remember to share this information with others. You never know who may need it or how it can truly help someone else. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Jon Vaughn to Open Stance. So Jon, we're talking today about Headspace Health. It's a global company that delivers mental telehealth to 190 countries. And you and I, we've shared some awesome conversation in the last 6 months. And one of those was about this company, Headspace Health. And you mentioned you actually are a member and you've used it. So love to hear some of your experience about this company and what it is and what it's done for you.
You know, the interesting thing about Headspace, it was almost serendipity how I found them, but also at a time I was in a massive transition. I was dealing with this battle against Michigan, and I had hurt. So there was a service provided through the university during the mediation and whatnot in the Dr. Anderson case that we were supposed to be able to have any therapist or mental health support that was paid for by Michigan. And for me, I am a proponent of therapy. I'm a proponent of taking care of your mental health. And, but I got referred to a therapist who could prescribe drugs, maybe a psychiatrist, one of the Is. And it's during COVID, we're on a FaceTime call. So it's my first time meeting this gentleman. I hadn't really even gotten into, I'm just introducing myself to him. And while I looked at him, I was having panic attacks for the first time in my life at 50 years of age, because I was getting death threats and slandered and all these things because I spoke out my truth against Michigan. And within the first 12 minutes of the call, he immediately he asked for my pharmacy, and he prescribed Zoloft and Xanax. And I hadn't even, we're in the introduction phase. And I immediately, at that point, kind of went through the motions on the call. Was like, this is extremely disturbing, because as he's telling me what he's going to put me on, I'm researching on my laptop these medicines and what they do and the side effects and what are usually the symptoms or the mental illness that you're prescribed these drugs, right? And so there was like no way. My father, who was a prescription drug addict, so I'm very anti-pill. And so I actually watched a video on YouTube from a group called Yes Theory. And that episode was super positive. And then I started diving deep into them. And one episode that I watched, they were sponsored by Headspace Health and the Headspace app. And
did you know what Headspace Health was?
You and I briefly spoke of, in a generic way, the company, but we didn't talk about the name when we first met. So I had no idea that after, this is a year or so of knowing each other, that Headspace Health was the company that you were speaking of. So I immediately, I'm a proponent of meditation and mindfulness and all those things, immediately looked at the app and the different websites and was blown away because I knew that, I needed to get control of these panic attacks that were happening pretty regularly, sometimes several in the course of a day. And, without question, the different, let's call them modules, or the different meditations or the mindfulness literally saved my life because I felt like I was on this ever shrinking island because of speaking out my truth about the trauma that I faced at Michigan. And then as I would, use the app, and it wasn't like every day, all the time, but it was almost what I would call a lighthouse, a port in the storm that would come when I was going through some of these episodes or having long, dark nights and sleepless. I would think, oh, let me just try this Headspace. And then eventually, I got a free trial, and then I ended up subscribing. And, till this day, I am my credit card, I just updated my credit card information because my old credit card had expired and I forgot to change my payment method. So it's still something that I use today. And when I started looking at what and who they were, alongside conversations that you and I have been having for probably the last 6 months, specifically on Headspace Health, it just fell right into, our overall arching mission is to be survivor focused, to be very mindful and intentional about the products, the services, the recommendations of the things that we as survivors use to, we actually use these services, right? So we're not just referring people off. And in my journey over the last 3 years of being an outspoken advocate for sexual assault survivors, I found that there's this duality in the industry. The industry's there. There are tons of opportunities for you to seek treatment, but as a man, as a male, and then as a man of color, I find that the barriers of entry for us to get mental health, sometimes even in our own communities, it's so taboo. It's very re-triggering to get yourself to the point of getting some type of help.
What are some of those barriers that people might recognize? They might not even know they're there, but what are some of the barriers that Headspace broke down?
For men being taken serious about their mental health or speaking up about their trauma, often it's not believed. Oftentimes, and especially in America and different ethnicities and cultures, it's taboo. they're just not going to be talked about. You pretty much suffer in silence, which is, essentially what I have done the first 50 years of my life, because I didn't feel like I had a safe space to speak in. And, most of, and being a professional athlete, it's very hard for us to, walk into a neighborhood therapy center or psychologist's office, sit in a waiting room for treatment. Like there's just so many stigmas to men actually thinking about their mental health. It's considered a weakness. I found that the interface for Headspace Health was so unobtrusive and it was unthreatening. And so that I could do the research, I could look through all of who they are without feeling that, because a lot of times as vocal survivors that you and I are, it's very daunting, one, to be taken in serious, but it's also, you're front facing, taking the arrows in the fight to eradicate this, but then also you have your own things that you want to make sure that you're healthy and you're mentally sane. And so I found that I was able to let down my guard and really take instruction from the different modules and programs that Headspace Health offered, because I think there's no cookie cutter way to help someone going through any mental wellness journey. And I think that's
one of the things is, so with Headspace Health, there's all different stages of help and support available. Everything you've talked a lot about, mindfulness and meditation and those apps. But then on the other spectrum, they do have the offerings for psychiatrists, behavioral counseling and coaching, psychologists, self-care resources. Did you experience any of those? Did you ever have interaction with counselors or therapists through Headspace Health?
I did not, but I really researched kind of an ongoing mental health plan with them. And what I loved about it is it meets you wherever you are in the road to recovery and the road to getting through your trauma, which I felt was extremely positive. And especially as I've, spoken to so many survivors, male and females, one of the key, I think, crossroads for getting the help that they need is finding an avenue that meets you where you're at in your stage of what I would call going from victim to survivor, right? That metamorphosis that must happen, that kind of looking at the man in the mirror to really being serious and intentional about where you are and the road that is customized that Headspace Health offers, I think was something that the more I dug into it, the more I've been, for lack of better words, willing to become this guinea pig in this process, to look into trying so many different avenues within their system so that as I refer them, it's there's that saying, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. If you teach a man a fish, he feeds himself for life.
Yeah.
I also think that's very applicable to mental health. And I felt like they fed me when I needed it most during that time in the battle against Michigan. But the resources within the Headspace Health, biosphere, if you will also teach me how to fish, which in essence will teach me the tools, recognizing the triggers, also the comfort to continually, because I say survival is not like you're just on this busy highway, you get off and everything's fine. No, it's a continual, you never get over it, you just get through it. And so I think that as, and you can attest to this, as Headspace Health has grown and now expanding internationally, their services, their products, their apps, it's only going to continue to grow. And I think that is one thing that has been extremely promising for me, is they were that first lighthouse in the mental health space that literally saved my life. That was a beacon of light in the darkest time of my life. And now that I know that direction, I have it on my iPad, I have it on both my phone, my iPhones, I have it on, my browser saved as a favorite on both my laptops. And so everywhere I go, at a moment's notice, I have access to the Headspace Health biosphere. So and that's truly, important to me, because you never know what's going to trigger and when and where.
What you said there, talk to me or talk to us about the accessibility of it. So in the beginning of our conversation, you talked about going to a therapist's office. You had to make time, I'm sure. Did it cost a lot of money? And very intimidating. What is it like knowing the accessibility and the consistency behind being able to just have we all have an iPad, a phone, everything with us at all times, and just being able to rely on it instantaneously? What is that like?
That is because that is so key. I mean, I think that's actually the great thing about Headspace Health, is it's available 24/7, 365 days. There are tools to help you, because, as you know, sometimes when you're in the fight, you're in the fight. And then when you lay down your sword or you take a rest, your trauma hits you at 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. I always have my phone within reach, my laptop, whatever, that I can instantly plug in. I know that it, like, the fundamentals and the foundation is really to support the mental health community. And that mental health community is wide as it is deep. And it is, with the different layers of trauma that you face in mental health, there are the different levels of treatment and access. And I think that more than anything else, when you're drowning, all you want to do is reach out for the lifeboat, or all you want to do is reach out for that life preserver. And I think they have a wide suite of life preservers that, I've gone on Headspace Health, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, just to calm my breathing, start to meditate.
Tell us, what does that look like at 2 a.m? What do you actually do for people that haven't used this service? What happens, or what do you listen to?
Usually it's it's such a positive welcome when you open up the app, and then there are just all these tools of the day and mindfulness kind of actions that you can do periodically. So literally, you just jump right in, and it's tailored to who you are as a user. And usually it says, good evening, good day, good morning, Jonathan. Here's tools throughout the day, and you just plug in from wherever you're at. And that's the thing that I like, that the first thing they do is welcome you into the community. It's a very welcoming experience. And sometimes, you're half asleep, you're in the dark, you pick up your phone and you're just kind of opening the app. And, really I think the thing that is so good for me is there's immediately tools, like, for instance, mindful activities first thing in the day, to-do list help, meditation experiences, all of these things in the afternoon, at night, in the morning. So there are, no stone has been unturned within the Headspace Health company. It's almost like they have a very intuitive nature to the process of healing, to have not only sustainable but a healthy mental health for individuals. And I would assume that each individual path is very customized, but yet they have the knowledge and the experience and the medical and the therapy, expertise to know that these are the things that, or these are some of the tools that have helped so many others. I mean, when I think we talked, they had, over, and I think even on their website, like over 4,000 mental health experts within every aspect of their platform. So that's a wide, range of, experts to help you get through, whether it's your trauma or just get through. I want to be more intentional in my breathing. I want to be more intentional in not overwhelming myself, because a lot of times as survivors, especially as athletes like you and I, we compartmentalize. And so just give me this to-do list so that I don't have to take a step back and really think about how I'm doing. They have so many tools to regulate your, because if your brain's not in it, if your mental health is not there, everything else kind of falls apart. And what I've learned to lean on is once in the app, they are applicable tools when not, in the app, like, certain breathing techniques. I was like doing yard work or something, and, just thinking as I'm doing yard work, and I didn't have my phone on me. It was like in my sunroom, and as I'm cutting the grass and whatnot. And as I'm thinking, I started having a panic attack. And I immediately thought back to a meditation tool that I had just recently done. So I think that it's very sticky, if you will.
Yeah.
In their recommendations, they obviously work. They've obviously spent a tremendous amount of time, energy, money, effort, and collaboration to find tools that stick, right?
And tell us a bit more about how personalized it is, because when you look at a company like Headspace Health and you hear these amazing things, you also see that they're a huge global operation in something like 190 countries. So when you hear that at first and you haven't used them, do you find the immediate response might be, well, that's way too impersonal, it's just a website? But you talk about how custom and personal it is. What can you share about that experience?
Yeah, I was very intentional about working my way through, answering the questions, or, setting up my profile. Even that was very comforting. So I felt as if in the user, the interface was very Jonathan attentive, if you will. And so that really, really helped. But yeah, they're a big company. Yes, they have so many, like you said, 190 countries. But I think with mental health, it is a roadmap, not an end all to be all. I think what they give you is they bring the horse to water and they allow you to comfortably drink. Because I think in the sphere of mental health, and I say this all the time, broke people break things and hurt people hurt people. And so, and a lot of times that hurt and that brokenness is we do it to ourselves. And so I think where they start is from a position of, let me hold your hand as we walk through the unbreaking and then the unhurting, as well as, for me, there's just a huge level of empathy and thought that I think and I, understand technology. I used to own an IT consulting firm, so I understand how black and white and how static technology can be, the programming language and things of that nature. But it's very, I say it's very huggable, because sometimes you just need to be embraced as a mental health survivor and have had challenges with your mental health. Like, I feel like I can always connect and find something to not just give me a hug, but allow me to hug myself.
So when I look at you, John, and I look at, all your incredible accomplishments, you're a former amazing football player. And when you think about football players, they're the toughest guys on the planet, really. So in your experience as a male football player, would this have been something that you would have been open to in your playing days? Is this something that you see being useful in today's world with guys like yourself that are out there today? Would they be open to it? How do you see Headspace Health being a real benefit to specifically male football players?
Oh, absolutely. I think, I definitely would have reached out and looked at the services as being something, another tool in my mental health journey. Because if you think about most of the major sports globally, as well as even in the military, mental health is an issue. And I think one of the misnomers about mental health is that, you're labeled as crazy or you're labeled as this or that. And there's just always this negative connotation. But usually a mental health issue comes from some type of trauma. Okay. And it's diagnosing the trauma, not diagnosing the symptoms, that are so key. And I think, the duality of Headspace is you have the tools to get yourself to understanding where you're at on that, let's call it the road to a healthy mental health life. But then it also gives you the tools to plug into professionals along the way that help guide you. It's almost like I don't know, in Australia, like we have Waze and Google Maps that help you get anywhere now in the world, right? They are your, personal, turn by turn navigation in this vast world of mental health. And, I read a book a while ago. It's called The Unquiet Mind, and then another one is The Body Keeps the Score. And so unresolved mental health will manifest itself in different areas of your life. I call them the train wrecks of your life. So either you're going to have train wrecks going forward if you're not dealing with your mental health, or train wrecks going back. And I think that as sports have grown, the resources of, and the value proposition is the players, the specific athletes. And you can't just be physically fit, you also have to be mentally fit. And so I've had conversations with executives in the NFL through a really good friend of mine. I'm in the next 6 weeks or so going to be meeting with a 3-star general in the US military to really talk about how do we not only teach, or how do we provide resources for mental health while you're active in the military or playing these sports, but also the follow on. Because as you and I both know, a lot of times, especially when it comes to sexual trauma, we don't even declare women, the average age is 52. And because men have now started to take care of themselves from, maybe past sexual trauma, there is really no hard data of when men will speak on their trauma. And so, like, just for me, for instance, most of my, the foundation of my sexual trauma, if you will, all happened before I was 21. years of age. And that was in like a conscious state, active, if you will. But subconsciously, I dealt with that all the way up until I realized how damaging those traumas were that I had dealt with at 50 when I was speaking out against the atrocities that happened to athletes at the University of Michigan. And so as an athlete, my charge is I can't change what happened to me, but I can look at resources to help make the athletic world, or just the world in general, a better place now and for in the future. Because mental health, I think, will always be, it's a very recognized field of part of the medical community. And we're starting to see how mental health plays on so many other illnesses, and so I think the key to, working with a company like Headspace Health is to provide the resources now, from the past, during, and then afterwards, because you never know when that trauma is going to come up. And I think that they are perfectly positioned to speak to assisting, because football players know football, rugby players know rugby, wrestlers know wrestling. We don't know in mental health. And so, but I think where there are lower barriers of entry in the sporting world, if you bring partnerships like Headspace Health, we're all used to coaching, we're all used to training, and we all go to all these different experts to help us perform on the field. But none of that performance can happen if in between those 6 inches between your ears is not healthy, right? Because that drives everything. So we have the same in, I grew up in the Midwest in America, and we have the same, if you stand next to corn, you look like corn. And if a team like Headspace Health is on your team, their reputation precedes itself with knowing that you are actively in consideration of your mental health, whether it's past traumas or just dealing with the daily grind of high performance athletics. I think that they can be a key partner in the long run that really helps so many, not just men, but men and women from the athletic world are suffering for lack of true organic opportunities to, yes, not only help them perform, but also the collateral damage of how mental health and not dealing with those traumas in our ability to compartmentalize as athletes affects us as stewards of the game, if you will.
So, and on the back of that, how important would it be now for young athletes, speaking of, to go into these organizations of any kind, knowing that a Michigan University, a Duke University, the NFL teams that you played for have partnered with a company like Headspace Health, and part of the program that is advocated for players to protect them and keep them healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, is part of that program, and destigmatizing that kind of help from the get-go and offering anything from mindfulness meditation on the grand spectrum to psychiatry and drug medication and or coaching, that type of thing. How important to know that your organization supports that and offers that as part of your whole plan.
Oh, I think it's critical. I think it could be a game changer. Is to take, when you look at, in my era, there was no internet, there were no cell phones. So you had a lack of the resources that we have today to get educated on, why play here or sign here or do this or do that. But now having these resources so publicly known would only ensure that all of these sports would live on, because you don't have great sports without great people. Does that make sense? Like, you can't have a great coach without great athletes. And you don't have great athletes without great coaches. Like, they are a symbiotic union. And these programs and these professional teams, they're all a big, organism, if you will, that they have to run. One is not or would it be interdependent? You can't have one without the other. Like,
Codependent?
everyone, there's this codependency. And we no longer can just look at the athletic ability, right? And so in the recruiting process, in the signing process, to know that I have I have the opportunity to sign with this college or this professional sports team, and I'm looking at how the holistic program that they have within, and know that there's a company like Headspace Health because sports psychology is more prevalent today than it's ever been. And so the mental part of the game and the mental part of the person is so much more valuable, because we know the damage that not having a healthy mental state can be, not only to athletes, but sometimes these billion-dollar organizations. So I think, that standing up front and center, like you said, NFL, Headspace Health, you stand next to corn, you look like corn. It's amazing, because perception is reality, right? And if you look at these great organizations, these great sporting unions, these great, blue blood colleges that we go to, but they're also standing with, resources for their athletes. It's a game changer. I mean, it's truly a game changer, because we live off of these now, right? And there's only so much you can do on the practice field anymore. So we're going to use technology as a way to better, the athletic community. And I think it can only get there with, a partnership, an alliance with a company like Headspace Health, because sports are global. Sports are global.
And speaking of global, so for athletes that have to travel, this is one that I think would have helped me so much. I was a tennis player, and I spent, 10 months a year on the road. So again, I didn't have technology. I'm in your generation, but looking at tennis players today, or those athletes that are on the road for the majority of the year, the consistency of being able to access your mental health through your phone. We can do that anywhere now. So what do you, just being able to, you talk about the consistency, you have your phone all the time, you can do it at 2 a.m. Well, also if you're traveling around the world, you're able to really keep it up.
And I'm almost positive that there's even like integration in your Apple Watch, your Google Watch. Like, I think there's no limit to where that technology, where you have access to those services. But like you said, we're on different time zones, we're in different countries, we have different schedules. But the one thing that is a constant is we will never not be a society connected to technology. And that right there is going to be key, not only for athletes of today, but athletes of the future. And I think that, nothing is future proof, but Headspace Health sure does a great job along the way.
John, on that note, we're coming back for part 2 of this. I want to thank you for your time on Headspace Health and mental health that you've experienced. It's been amazing. So let's take a wrap there and come back for part 2 with the rest of your journey. I know you've got a book
Awesome.
coming out and a world tour coming
Yeah.
up, and your advocacy, and would love to look at the latest in what you're doing.
No, that'll be great. And, we can really start to peel the onion too about how, really like daily I incorporate, little timeouts for my mental health as a part of my strategy and all my advocacy and book writing and all that. I mean, I think it all is all interconnected. So I look forward to our next conversation.